Well, it's an important date, obviously, in their history, and there are all sorts of domestic politics there around nationalism and asserting themselves that we see coming out. But I think over the long run, we need to be looking at what's going to happen between the U.S. and the Chinese economies. Are we going to continue to be interconnected the way we have been, and we see that playing out in the rare earths discussion today, or are we going to see a decoupling, both in terms of trade and potentially in terms of technology? And that's the bigger, probably more substantial issue than whether or when we get a particular trade agreement agreed to with the Chinese in the short run.
I think that's a really interesting point, Michael. And as you know, the trade war goes on and on and on. Companies are making provisions to work around it. We heard that, for instance, in Cisco's last quarterly report that they had been working on workarounds for 6 months and had actually figured it out so as not to impact their first quarter results. And so do you foresee that this decoupling becomes much more substantial and that power actually shifts away from China economically?
Well, I think the decoupling could accelerate, and we could see factories moving from China to Vietnam or Malaysia or elsewhere. I think the challenge is in this tit-for-tat tariff situation. You know, it's our farmers and ranchers and manufacturing exporters who stand to lose access to what is obviously a very important long-term market in China. If we pull out, if we're kept out of that market, those markets will be taken by our European or Japanese or Korean competitors, and that in the long run will be difficult for us to get back into.
How much, Michael, if at all, do you think the Chinese weigh U.S. domestic politics and the president's personal situation in respect with trade?
Well, I think they follow it extremely closely. They don't always read it correctly, but I think they care a lot about it a lot. And they're trying to, you know, they understand that China has become a galvanizing force across the political spectrum, and that there's more of a bipartisan consensus on the importance of being tough with China now than perhaps ever before. But I think at the same time, they're trying to send the message that going down this path is going to hurt some very important constituencies across the country, particularly in the agriculture community, but increasingly in the manufacturing community, and ultimately in consumers who will end up paying up to a 25% tax on the kinds of clothing and shoes and day-to-day goods that they rely upon China for imports from.